If you remember back to last season when we tested our Project Scrambler ATV, there were a few very evident issues that showed themselves early on, and the biggest of which was the rear driveline. While the front four-wheel drive drivetrain didn't work at all, we knew this up front when making the buying decision. But it wasn't until we took the Scrambler out on the trails that we found it was in turf mode all the time. And if you're familiar with Polaris ATVs, turf mode didn't come out for almost another decade. Our problem was not only a minorly bent rear axle, but a majorly stripped rear wheel hub, making it impossible for us to fix without the use of Pure Polaris parts. On a solid axle ATV, the rear hub takes a lot of the abuse and transfers the power from the ATV to the ground. Being the last bolt-on part before the wheel, this adds to the strain and stress of also being the furthest leverage point away from the vehicle, and after 14 years of abuse, we have the need for repair. Now, most people will cringe at the thought of replacing a rear axle or hub, but as we outlined in a previous episode last year that you can check out on our website, the removal process is quite simple, and reinstallation is a breeze as well. During last season, we went ahead and replaced the bearings in the rear axle carrier, as these tend to require an overhaul after this many years of use. The brand spanking new axle slides through the carrier, along with the chain sprocket and huge axle nuts that secure and center the axle in the carrier. And lastly, our new Pure Polaris hubs are going to bolt onto the splines of our new axle. You can potentially reuse an old hub, but you want to be sure you check it over closely because bolting old parts up to new parts can sometimes damage the ones you just spent all that money on. While we've got the rear end of our Scrambler all pulled apart and we're strengthening it up, we thought we might as well install an Epi Clutch Kit and make sure that we're transferring all of that power to the ground in the most efficient way possible. At this point of the project, we need to start finishing up and finalizing our build, and it seemed natural to update and overhaul the clutches, as I'm sure 14 years of ripping it up has caused a little wear. With the secondary already off the Scrambler, we might as well start here and go ahead and break down the secondary clutch, removing the spring and helix that's found inside. The stock springs in the clutch of your old ATV will typically be sagged down when compared to the new spring. And while a lot of times there is a very minor difference, it's that little bit that does a whole lot out on the trails. Removing the primary clutch is a pain and it requires a special service tool. Now, if you don't have this service tool and you want to leave the clutch on the ATV, you can do most of the required work for a clutch kit right from the side of the vehicle. Always remember when working with clutches that they are under pressure and treat them with caution. Working on the primary clutch does look daunting from the outside, but any clutch kit you buy, and especially this one from EPI, comes with foolproof step-by-step instructions you can't go wrong with. Now that we have our clutches all finished up and overhauled, I come back to my earlier point about not putting old parts with new ones. And in reference to the clutches, I'm talking about your belt. If you've never replaced your belt or it's been a long time, you should seriously consider spending the little extra money it will cost to update it when installing a clutch kit. The added performance a clutch kit provides does increase stress on the belt, and it just makes sense while you have the vehicle apart. My takeaway point for today is this: if you're going the extra mile and increasing the performance of your ATV, or even bringing your ATV back up to par, don't cheap out. Spend the extra money and replace worn out parts that you're already working on.